Hi, in this video I'm going to introduce you to the most basic features of your DSLR camera. We're going to get into detail about all the different aspects of the camera and get into every little part and function in detail throughout the remainder of the course. But for today, I just want to have you go through a checklist, find some basic features and some basic parts of your camera, and get yourself set up so that you can start working in manual mode. We will be in manual exposure mode for the duration of the semester. Now, some of you maybe have already worked in manual exposure mode. Some of you may have never gone there. Some of you may have never picked up a DSLR. So for some of you, this will seem very basic, and some of you, you'll be very grateful that I'm starting and pretending as if you've never touched one of these cameras before. I'm going to walk you through it very, very carefully and slowly. Now, manual exposure mode means that you are going to be measuring and setting all of your dials yourself for each exposure. And that may sound daunting, but within a very short time, you're going to realize how exciting it is and how much creative control it gives you. Okay, so let's get started. This is an entry-level Nikon DSLR. This is the D3200, which is actually a little slightly older model. This is a great camera if you can get a hold of it. The newer version is the D3200. The D5300 is another great entry-level Nikon camera. These are all perfect cameras for starting this class. Now, you may have a higher-end camera, or you may have something even a little simpler than this, but this is a really good starting point. And although this camera, so here's the bad news. Every camera, every brand, every model, they all are configured a little bit differently. And so some of the things that I show you on this camera, they're not going to be the same for even the newer model. They're not going to be the same in a Canon, or in, if you happen to have like a Sony or a Lumix mirrorless, which is a very different animal. Fine for the class, but very, very different. So please be patient. Know that this isn't going to look exactly like your camera, but every feature I show you is going to be on your camera in approximately or somewhat the same place. And we'll have opportunity in discussion or one-on-one to make sure that you have been able to find all of these features on your own camera. All of these features that we're going to go over are on your checklist in the module, but let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we want to find on our DSLR camera is our memory card. The memory card is usually here. It may or may not have come with your camera. Even if it does, it's going to be a smaller memory card. You want to get some more. There's usually a compartment over on the side. Probably, in all likelihood, you are going to have what's called an SD card, which is this size. And this particular one is 32 gigs, and that's perfectly good. But I think I'd recommend 64, and maybe something that has what we call a faster write speed, but this is totally fine to get started. It's very small, but this is where all of the information from the photographs that you shoot are going to be stored. So it is something you want to pay close attention to. Good to have two. We will actually start our demo by going ahead and reformatting this card, because when you get a new card, or when you change a card from one camera to another, you want to actually format it for that card. Okay, so that's in place. The other thing you want to check on is your battery. It's going to be down here in this compartment. All of the batteries for these cameras are rechargeable lithium batteries. And it's great to have a second one, but this battery and its charger will come with the camera. It's very important that you keep track of those, by the way, because it seems frustrating, but all Nikon batteries are not the same. Even if you just move from model to model or level to level, each battery is different for each model of camera. So you want to have your own, and you want to have your own charger. That said, these batteries last a long time. They recharge relatively rapidly, and they're great. So get that in so that we're able to turn our camera on. The next thing I want to do is walk you through a couple of menu items. So if you turn the camera around and you look at the LCD screen, this is going to be a little bit different configuration, both for models and brands, and especially, like I said, if you have one of those mirrorless. This is going to be your information panel, your shooting information panel. Where we want to go actually to get started is to our menu. And on the Nikon, and I think think this is true. It's approximately the same place for the Canons. On the Nikon, the menu is almost always over here. It's a little button that says menu. And there's the menu. The menu is a more complicated place with a lot more features. These mainly are going to go in and out of this only in between shoots, not while you're actually making individual photos. And some of this you'll set up and you may not touch it again for a very long time. Some of it you'll change with each shoot. So to start with, there is a longer menu along here and menu details come up here. Now on a Canon, this menu item, all these different options are across here and things come down. On the Nikon, they're on the left and they go over. So keep in mind that the configuration may be different, and even some of the terminology, the descriptions of these different areas are going to be different, but they are going to be the same things. And this is where your manual will help you. I'll try whenever I'm demonstrating to give you suggestions of what they might be on a different camera. It's not my fault all the camera manufacturers decided to change it up. So I apologize for that, but we'll get through it. So what I want to do, go back, bring up the menu. Sometimes they have an automatic off. I'm going to go over here to the left, and it starts up with the playback menu. We don't need to do anything there right now. I actually want to start 3 down because I want to show you where the format memory card is. When you put a new card in, or if you change a card from another camera into this camera, you need to reformat it. Now, be warned, when you reformat a memory card, it erases everything on it. So if you don't want to do that, don't do this, but then you may not be able to take pictures on that card. When you are done with a card and you've transferred all the images off and you know you have them safely stored, every once in a while you want to erase that card again. Don't do it in the computer. Don't do it one by one. You do this with the reformat, the memory card here. So it's right here, and it says, notice that it's on no, just in case I got there by accident. I don't want to accidentally do it. I'm going to move it to yes and hit OK, and it formats the card. It erases everything on there and it formats it for this camera. So this is an important thing to do before you get started, but do it to an empty card, not to one with images. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I'm actually going to go back up the menu, and I'm going to go back up to my shooting menu. And there's several things on here that we want to do. We're going to start with the image quality. Oops, I have to remember to move over. It's hard to do this from backwards. We'll start with image quality. And the image quality has to do with the type and the size of the image file that we're going to use. For this class, we're going to start, for Nikon, it's called JPEG Fine. Up above this, you notice you have NEF RAW plus JPEG, NEF RAW, JPEG Fine, JPEG Medium, and JPEG Small. We want to start right in the middle, basically, with JPEG Fine. We're going to be switching to a different format in a few weeks, but for right now, we want to stay on that. It's going to make our life work very smoothly. On this particular camera, I don't think this is on all Nikon models. This also has an image size, and I think later models don't have this, but if you see this, make sure that that is set on large. Okay, so the next thing we want to go to is white balance. White balance, you can just leave on auto for now. The white balance sets the ability of the camera to recognize the color, the color of the light around it, and to change its settings in response to that. You can play around with these. You can set it for indoor, you can set it for daylight, for shade, but right now just go ahead and leave it on auto, and it should be able to read most light situations. We'll come back to the white balance later in the semester and get into it in a little bit more detail. For right now, you can just leave it on auto. Okay, and the last one, most important for this area, for the menu, is the ISO sensitivity settings. ISO, which we'll get into more detail later, has to do with the sensitivity of your image sensor to the light that comes in. So you might want to set your ISO to be higher or more sensitive if you're shooting in a dark area, and to be lower and less sensitive if you're shooting in a bright area. For you right now, we're going to start our ISO at 400, which is pretty much right in the middle. The main thing I want you to do is to be sure it's on 400, but also to make sure that you are not on ISO auto sensitivity. This looks a little different in the Canon and in other cameras, but there's going to be something that has to do with ISO sensitivity, and an auto ISO. You do not want it on auto ISO. This would be auto. We don't want it on there. We want that off. And the reason for that is that if you're on auto ISO, it is basically just like putting the whole camera on auto, even if you have the manual exposure setting on, because it's going to change the ISO to compensate. We don't want to do that. We want to have full control over everything. So leave that auto off. So if we go into sensitivity, you notice we have lots of different options. And I'm just going to pull it down here into the middle on 400. Notice that even though these settings and these menus will be quite different for different cameras, you're going to find the same numbers and the same things on each of these cameras. Those will not be different. Okay. Now I'm going to turn the camera around, show you a couple other things. We want to, before we go further, we'll check on our auto and manual focus. This is usually just on the lens. There are sometimes features on higher end cameras where you can control. There are ways that you control some of the focus from inside, but for right now, just check your lens. You'll have on the side of the lens, there'll be an A and an M normally. Auto, this is autofocus. Manual is manual focus. We'll get into, again, the details of how to work with focus later on, and when you should be on auto and how you should use auto and when you can be on manual. For right now, go ahead and play with both. Remember that auto will focus in the center of the scene, which isn't always where you want to focus. You might want to switch to manual and play with that. If there is a VR, this is vibration reduction, make sure that go ahead and set that on, because that's very helpful to reduce some of the effects of the camera shaking. Okay. Last but not least, very important, and again, this is going to be the part that may stump you. We're going to be spending a lot more time with it. I can help you one-on-one. We'll discuss it in class. I need for you to be able to find and change the aperture and the shutter speed settings. Now, if you want to look at where they are set, we'll go back to this menu. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and put this here, and I'll just put this here so you can see right now. So when you hit this button and you get your general menu, you're going to have, it might be up here, it's going to be in various places, but on this menu, we see 1/8 on the left, and on the right it says f8. So the number on the left is the shutter speed setting, and it's a fraction. That's 1/8 of a second. It's a fraction of a second. And the one on the right is the aperture. That number is a little more complicated, and we'll get into it more later. But it always has an F in front of it. And in this case, it's F8. Now, down below or somewhere on the same screen with your aperture and shutter speed, you're going to see some kind of a graph. This is actually your exposure indicator. It's connected to your meter. The meter is the thing in your camera that measures the amount of light that comes into the camera. When you're on manual, you need to be able to read this exposure indicator and change the aperture and the shutter speed to get the correct exposure. So let's first talk about what aperture and shutter speed are. The aperture is actually the hole in your camera that lets light in. And in a DSLR, we can actually open that aperture up very wide. We can shut it down very small to let in more light or less light. So the aperture is this hole in your camera that lets the light in. The shutter, which we can't see, and by the way, you can't see the aperture because it's inside of the lens. The shutter, which we also can't see on this camera, but the shutter is back here on the back of the camera, and it's basically a curtain that lifts up and goes down again while the aperture is open for a specific period of time. And that's the shutter. So the shutter might be open 1/8 of a second or 1,000th of a second. The aperture might be very wide or it might be very small. And so that changes the amount of light that comes into your camera. The meter and the exposure indicator tell you if that's enough light, too little light, or too much light. Well, first of all, let's make sure, one of the things I want you to make sure of is that you know how to set your aperture and shutter. So let's go back to this menu. On almost all cameras, all DSLRs, the shutter is going to be right here. It's going to be a dial somewhere in this area on the right of the camera. And notice as I change that, now let's go this way, it's going to change to these different fractions. I was down at 1/8 of a second, now I'm at 125th, 250th, and on up from there to what are bigger numbers, but actually less light, of course. So the other thing that I want to show you is the aperture. Now, on a more expensive camera, you're going to have dedicated dials for your aperture and shutter speed, and generally the aperture on a Nikon is going to be up here. Notice there's no dial here on this what we call the entry-level camera. You're going to have to hold an extra dial. In this case, that button is right here, and I'll show you how that works. We'll go back, turn that on. I hold that down, and then that shutter dial becomes my aperture dial. So that's how it works on this camera. Now, like I said, on different cameras, it's going to be a little bit different. You need to find the aperture and the shutter on your camera. You may have to get the manual out to figure out how that all works and where those dials are. But they're going to be something on this side. They'll be very similar to that. Okay, now the exposure indicator and the meter, very important. In the next video, I'm going to walk through the steps that you need to use your exposure indicator to set your aperture and shutter speed and make a photograph that is correctly exposed.